Title is Men and Legacy. The lesson, again, it starts off in my spirit, and I want everyone to know that we live in America, the richest, most powerful, most influential nation in the history of the entire earth. There has never been a nation as rich and wealthy, as powerful as the United States of America. There just has not been. We have the most educated people. We have the most clever people. We've built atomic bombs. We've built planes that can fly higher than any other. We've walked on the moon, baby. That's 200 and some thousand miles away, but we got there and we walked on it and then flew back and got in the car and drove around because we are that bad. But also in America, you might not realize this, but we also imprison more men than any other country in the history of mankind. We imprison more people. We have more people physically in prison than the Germans did, than the Russians do, than any other nation does. At this moment, in the history of mankind, we are actively imprisoning the men in our society. We're locking them up. We're throwing them away. And right in front of our eyes, we are watching men disappear out of homes. We're watching men forget that they are important, lose track of what they're meant to be doing. They are no longer standing in their homes because they're being taken out of place. Society is right now placed in created an atmosphere where it's easier for a single woman to get food than for a married woman with a husband to get help.
Jesus. That's a shame.
A single woman with kids can get food stamps and food care, but if you're a family with a man in it, the government won't help you and you struggle. This isn't a government issue. This is not a racial issue. This is a spiritual issue. It has taken, I have thought long and hard on the number of young boys and men who through foolish choices or simply unfortunate circumstances are no longer an active part of their homes. They're just not there. And for all the men in this room, you know that you have lived long enough to know that I'm not making this up. Right now, there are too many smart, clever, intelligent men sitting in prison instead of sitting in college.
Jesus.
There are too many smart, intelligent young men who have lost their freedom instead of transforming the world through their brilliance. The enemy's ambition is not just to destroy the family. The enemy's ambition is to destroy the home. And the only way to do that is to remove the man from the household.
My God.
Because the enemy knows that if he is able to remove the man from the household, he is able to take the entire house.
Jesus. Jesus.
The Bible says clearly that unless you bind the strong man,
yes,
you will not be able to take the house. Bind the strong man. Sounds a lot like imprison the strong man.
Jesus.
In so many cases, the enemy will not only come in your house and take your man, but he'll bind him up, he'll lock him down, he'll take him away, he'll steal him up, and he'll rob you of your future. This is a lesson on legacy. Get this, not only are the men no longer there, but the men are no longer there to leave anything to their children and also to their children's children.
Jesus.
Proverbs 13:22, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. How many men have given any real thought to what they're going to leave to their children? I'm not talking about money, but even if I was, how many men have a storehouse of wealth to leave to their children? I mean, really, this is America. We're the richest nation on earth. And most of the wealth in this country belongs to 1% of it.
Wow.
2% of this country have more wealth than the bottom 90%. Physically. Where are this wealth? What are these men leaving to their children? I'm going to tell the truth about something. And I'm just telling the truth about something. For me, I didn't even hear the word legacy until I was an adult. I mean, I'm not an uneducated man, but nobody ever talked to me about leaving legacy to my children. To be honest, I never heard of it until I was a pastor. That's only been in the last 7, 8 years. Legacy. What am I leaving to my children? The definition of legacy is something transmitted by or received from an ancestor or predecessor from the past. Legacy is something that I leave my children. Now, I want to give you something because this is an important thing. God created a system of spiritual and natural transference. That God has created the inability for you not to leave anything to your children. Sorry, there's going to be meat coming, but I got to lay foundation. You will have to leave. Because God's created a system of transference, you will leave something to your children. It may be physical, because babies are only created through the transference of DNA. Therefore, my baby will look a lot like me. Check her out. She's beautiful. How could she not be? She will have my complexion. She'll have my smile. She'll have my big brown eyes. She will have my strength and my courage. Why? Because my DNA demanded that I will leave some legacy. White people rarely have black children. Black children rarely have Chinese children. Chinese children very, very, very rarely have Indian children. Why? Because God has created a system where you will transfer some legacy to your children.
Amen.
God has created to where it's impossible not to leave something to your children. It may be your looks, your smile, or your propensity to get diseases, or maybe possibly to become more likely to be alcoholic. Or more likely to catch diseases. But you will leave something. He also intended for us to leave some spiritual legacy to our children. You know, I wrote down Richie Rich on here. You guys are too young to read these comic books. When I was young, there was a character called Richie Rich. Richie Rich was the richest poor little rich boy. And Richie Rich was incapable of being broke because it was in his legacy to be poor. There was one comic that always stuck with me, and I'm gonna read this. I didn't write it down, but I wrote it down over here. Richie Rich had amnesia, and he was being on his own. He was homeless for a little while, and he was out there being homeless on the street, broke, not any money. He didn't know he was rich. He had dirty clothes and everything. So while he was out there, he opened a lemonade stand. And when he opened the lemonade stand, he decided to invest in the lemonade stand and market it effectively and put out flyers. And then he decided to hire some people in his lemonade stand. Then he decided to brand his lemonade stand. And before it was over with, Richie Rich, the poor little homeless boy, was rich again. He was a rich kid. And when he found his memory back and his dad found him, he found him rich. Not homeless and broke. It turned out that even in the core of his DNA, Richard Rich left to his son Richie Rich the inability to be broke.
I like it.
Because no matter what, his boy was going to find a way to transform poverty into wealth.
Yes.
Now that's just a cartoon. But somehow I believe that if your DNA, if you raise your kids to be strong and mighty and industrious, some kind of way, and the Bible sort of says that train a child in the way he should go.
Come on now. Come on.
When he is older, he may depart. But he'll
come back.
He'll come back. He'll find his way back.
Find his way back.
I can leave my daughter out in poverty, but she'll find her way to be strong again. I just know it. Because in her genes is my commitment to wealth and hard work and discipline.
That's right.
I'm not scared. I fear nothing. I'm Bill Malone, baby. Check me out. Unfortunately, too many men in our society aren't leaving anything to their children. Wait a minute. I just said that they had to leave something, didn't I? Well, that means that the only way to stop men from leaving something to their children is to what? Get rid of them. That explains why there are so many men that don't know how to be men. The Bible, and I shared this once before, that in the church, which you have mostly women, which Satan isn't all that scared of, just so you know, and I'll explain it in a little bit. A church full of women, partially, and what we've generated is we've generated a hyper spiritualized, hyper feminine, emotional environment that appeals to women. We praise a lot, we sing a lot, we jump around a lot, we get hyper emotional, and women seem to love it, but men sometimes sit there looking confused and wondering why they are there. There are pastors that like it because they've been raised in that environment and they don't realize how feminine the idea may be. But I'm not saying praise is feminine. Please don't get me on that. I love the praise, I get it. But if that's all you have, then there is no growth.
Amen.
We've even turned Jesus, who had probably the most manly job in the Old Testament. Now get this. He was a carpenter when you had no chainsaw. He was chopping down trees with an axe, not an iron axe, a stone axe. So the likelihood is Jesus didn't have soft hands and white clothing and beautiful flowing blonde hair.
Come on now.
Let's just be real about it. He was a carpenter, which means he had to saw things with a dull axe because they didn't know how to sharpen things back then. And let's be real, he probably had rough, splintered up hands. And a face sometimes that had splinters in it because he was a carpenter. He carried things on his back, baby. He carried his own cross. Yet somehow we depict him as being soft and mamby-pamby. Why? Because it appeals to women. Not getting on the ladies, but I grew up, we're pretty boys, we're pretty. Well, somehow we've transformed Jesus into a pretty boy. And when men come to church, if we want them to be spiritual, we want them to be pretty boys.
Wow.
We want them to
Wow.
be cute and not men.
My Lord.
I'm going to tell you something. For me as a man, part of my way of thinking is if I can't use it, I don't want it. So if I teach some lessons, it may sound fluffy and beautiful and emotional, but sometimes, and I'm just being honest, sometimes men leave the room wondering what that's all about. What am I going to do with that? If I tell the men it's okay to cry and just to praise and to shout and just lean on this and do on that, sometimes the men look and we're like, okay, I believe that, but now what do I do? For the ladies, I want you to hear something about men. Whenever you tell a man of your problem, his natural instinct is, how may I fix it? How can I solve it? Sister said. Men don't just listen to problems, and we don't generally complain for no reason.
That's right.
In fact, it's a little irritating. Men say amen. I'm giving the fake smile. Sometimes when we listen to our wives, our significant others, share their day and their various complaints, we are literally thinking, okay.
Smiling through it. One time you see my husband smile.
Why don't you just do this? I tried that. You ain't listening to me. I am listening, sweetie, but why don't you just not sit next to that person? I like him. What's wrong with you? You don't understand.
Why you gotta tell the truth?
Because in general, women don't get that men don't really complain for nothing. We approach the universe in ways to fix it, manage it, or create it. And when a complaint comes our way, we literally want to look for a way to fix it. And when you share your complaint with us, if we can't fix it, then we feel like we're wasting our time. And I'm saying this happens in church too. Too often we create an environment where we teach lessons, offer programs, do things that men can't use. We're just sitting there, we're there, but we don't know why we're there.
My Lord, my Lord, my Lord.
You know that Jesus, when Jesus taught his Sermon on the Mount, you know what I don't read that he did? I I don't read that he hooped. I don't read that the people got up and did a praise dance. Go ahead, Jesus. Jesus, preach that. Go! Help me, Jesus. Help me, Jesus. Go ahead. That's the word, Jesus. That's how I want to hear it, Jesus. Blessed are the poor. Yes, Jesus. Go ahead. It doesn't say that. In fact, it says that the men listened, focused, and intent.
My God.
Because those men said, I'm taking something home if I'm going to sit out here for this long. I'm taking something home. The men were sitting out there. The men were focused. The men were ready. The men were intent on learning something. God didn't, and I've shared this before. When I was a young elder, young minister, they just thought I was a robot. They didn't think that I was exuberant enough. I wasn't a praiser enough. They made fun of me, and it hurt my feelings deeply. Just being honest, I was sensitive back then. I was not a crier or anything, but it bothered me, But I now have grown to realize that God didn't call me to be the biggest shouter in the room. He called me to be the most steady man. Sometimes God called me to stay steady when everything else is going to hell in a handbasket. Sometimes my wife will tell you now, if I start to worry, then she knows there's something to worry about.
Yes, that's right.
Because I don't worry about when it makes sense to worry. I'm not going to worry. She'll bring me something and she's like, yeah, I can see, but God will work it out. I'll figure it out. Well, how? I want to know how he's going to work it out. This don't even make any sense. We need a plan. We need a plan right now. I'm like, sweetie, God's got this. I'm not even worried about it. I don't even think you understand. I don't think you're listening to me. If I start to worry, y'all better start. Man the battleship. Because I refuse to give in to my situation. I trust my God. And I believe and I hope that I play that in my children as well. Not to let these things bother me. But I want you to understand something, coming back to the topic of men. Men were not called to be, and I shared this when they built the house across the street from me, that I noticed when they built the house. They built this really nice house, and I think it's the cutest house, and I wish that we had bought it when they built it. I just love it. It's a cute little gray house. And when they built the house, they didn't start with the roof. They didn't put the roof on first. They didn't put the paint on and the decorations first. First, what they did is they made sure the foundation was ready. See, the men are not the roof. We're not the pretty decoration. We're not the shutters. We're not what people come to look at and say, wow, that looks beautiful. Those are the ladies. Y'all make sure that things look good and be ready. Water don't leak in. But the men are the foundation. We carry the weight of the entire family. We are what keeps it from being blown away in a storm. We are what keeps things steady. Believe it or not, that is what a man is supposed to be doing. And get this, you might not realize that, but the word husband comes from a word, it's husbandi. Who's bundy? Who's bundy or house bond stands for house bonded. A home, house, who's bonde, bonding. The man is called, when you're a husband, you're called to, believe this or not, hold the family together.
Amen. That's the truth.
Who teaches that? Nobody really, because in the world I live in and grew up in, it was the women that held everything together.
Yeah.
My mother was the solid rock in my house. What happened to the men?
My God.
What happened to even teaching the men that they were supposed to be the ones that held the family together?
My God.
Men hold the family together. Men hold the marriages together. Men, there's another definition for husband. The word husband also can mean stingy or careful or I wrote it down. It can mean a sparing, conservative. It's funny because when you hear the word husband, if I said you got to husband some things away, it literally means to husband some things away, to be conservative about some things. That's not taught. In fact, the definition of men has begun to shift to where we become a sort of interesting comic relief to society.
My God. I've forgotten that. Mm-hmm.
Not the necessity, not the necessary bond to hold things together. these sitcoms that come on, the men are rarely the ones that know what's going on in the household. They're usually the ones fumbling and bumbling and making every mistake, and the wife is the only one that knows what's really going on because the men are conceived and believed to be stupid.
Jesus.
We're the decorations.
My God.
We're not the careful, sparing husbands who's bonding. I'm not the one that's supposed to be bonding my family. Believe it or not, and I'm going to put this out there, and I know somebody's going to be offended by it. Maybe this is why there aren't all the men in here today. But if a marriage fails, I believe that it is because of the man. If your marriage fails, it's because the man didn't hold it together. She was just too emotional. She just lost her mind. She just went her separate way. I can't hold somebody that don't want to be held. Well, if you're the husband, that's your job.
My Lord.
And if you're the husband, you're supposed to find a way to handle, to deal with, to negotiate, to husband the situation. I know that's not a popular position. And I know somebody on the internet's going to write me something mean that I'm not going to listen to or read.
That's all right.
I'm just not.
That's all right.
As soon as I read it, sometimes I'll read it, I'm like, you should have said, I strongly disagree. The Bible called men to be the foundation of the homes, and believe this or not, whether you like it or not, God declared that if the children and the fathers do not have connection, then your land, your society is cursed.
That's right. That's word.
Malachi 4:6, it reads, the hearts of the father to the children, and the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. The entire earth is cursed. Not just your land, not just your house, not just your neighborhood, but everybody's neighborhood is cursed because the men have no active emotional connection with their children.
My God.
And I know if you have NIV, it says parents, but I looked it up. The original Hebrew says fathers. Fathers, drawn to your children. Fathers, get connection with your family. Fathers, find a way to connect. You know what's interesting? In 1 Corinthians 4:15-17, write that down. It says, for though you might have 10,000 instructors in Christ, yet you do not have many fathers. For in Jesus Christ I have begotten you through the gospel. I want to pause there for a second. You might have 10,000 men that want to teach you to be a man. Let me school you, boy. But you don't have very many fathers. And I'm putting this out there because it's obviously not talking about biology, because there's been men making babies for the longest.
Yes.
My Lord.
Come on now. Come on now.
Men make babies left and right. It's not even that big a deal for a lot of men. And I don't care who I feed. For some men, making babies is exercise. You know I'm telling the truth. So do you. But I want you to say this. There may be many people who want to teach you as instructors, but where are the fathers at?
Jesus.
They want to care for you. They want to nurture you. They want to be a component in your existence. What actually happened to that? You know, Newsweek had an article, and I looked it up last night. Newsweek had an article, and the article was titled, "The Dad is Destiny." The dad is destiny. Whatever the fathers are in your society, that's where the destiny of your society. Wherever the fathers are in your community, there's your community. Wherever the fathers are, that's what your family is. If most of the men are in prison, then the odds are you have a dangerous criminal-like community. If most of the fathers are drinkers or partiers, and there goes what they are. If you go to an environment where most of the men have high-end jobs and blah, 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 then the likelihood is all those kids somehow made their way to become successful. I'm not saying this is the absolute fact of everything, but because there are always outliers, but you can tell what is going on in society by telling what is going on with the people. Or not the people, the fathers. Now keep going with this. Because that verse that I read to you is at the end of Malachi. And then there's 400 years of silence until we get to the beginning of Matthew. And then Jesus came along. Now I'm going to say this, and I know it'll offend somebody, but fortunately there Well, wow. See, Lord, why did you put more men in this room? When Jesus came to fix the society, you know who he called? He called disciples. Do you notice that he didn't call one woman disciple? He said he called 12 men, 12 disciples, and the women followed. To fix a society, you have to fix the men.
Jesus.
To fix a society, you have to call the men. If you want to see change in your community, you have to call the men. Unfortunately, I have more women who are true disciples of Christ than men. How can society be changed when the strong man has been bound? And he no longer even believes that he has a legacy to transfer.
Jesus.
I can't teach a lesson on legacy until I teach a lesson on why men should teach it and why they're not. You might not realize it, but you don't. I mean, there's a lot of men who say they want to, but they're not fully convinced that they should. What does it really mean to be a man? I'm going to tell you this. Most men have no clue because they don't have sufficient fathering to tell them. Men no longer have the power of self-confidence or have clarity in what they are in society. They no longer have clarity of what it means to be masculine or what it means to be even wanted by women. Men don't feel wanted or even needed anymore. Women now have a battle cry. I don't need a man. I can do bad. You don't think the men hear that? You don't think the men haven't processed in their mind that they are not needed? Especially mothers with boys. How many times has your child heard you say, I don't need a man? You might not realize it, but women are actually hurting men because they are being strong because their men are so weak. I'm not saying you didn't have to be strong. I'm not even saying you're not strong. You are strong. My mother is the strongest woman I know. She's one of the strongest people I know. Because she had to be. And in the process, there are a lot of men who have become weak.
Jesus.
Because they let their women do their fighting.
My Lord, my Lord.
And their talking.
My Lord.
And their husbanding away of the finances.
Jesus.
They husband things, they budget things, they manage things sparingly, they keep things in order, and they husband the home. They're the ones that keep the house together. So what the heck happened to the men? They've lost their way. They've lost their place. They don't know where they are. They don't know what they're all about. They become weak, whiny babies. It's become a cycle where the women become strong because the men are so weak, so the men become weaker, so the women become stronger. And the women get so strong that the men get even weaker. And the women get, and they get this, and then the men get arrested, and they're not really there, and there are no fathers to teach them. And the men, because I believe every man wants to be a man. I believe this with my heart. But then what happens is, because there are no fathers, men begin to imitate other men who are not worthy to be imitated.
Say so.
And because with my heart I believe every man wants to be a man, unless of course they're imitating a man that doesn't want to be a man.
Jesus.
Tell the truth.
These men become soft, weak, misdirected, and some of them begin to imitate the strongest thing they see in life, which is a woman.
My God, my God.
They want that strength. They want that power. They want that attitude. You can't talk to me like that. Because that's the only strength they've ever seen, and that's the strength they desire. We're the fathers to teach our sons to be men. You know, I want to say this because I just read the verse in Malachi that literally said that there's a curse on the land if the men are not drawn in to the fathers and the fathers to the son. I want to say this, that one of the greatest curses in society is the lack of fathers. Men willing to actively, emotionally mentor other men. as a father figure.
That's right.
It says, imitate me. Do what I do. If daddy don't do it, you don't do it.
Amen.
You know what? I would venture to say that the majority of the men in this room and the majority of the men in this internet have never heard their father say to them face to face, I love you. How many men can honestly say they've heard their dad look at them in the eye and say, I love you? Or, I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of what you turn into. What's happened to society where the men mentor and guide and are physically there for their sons, and the men have someone physically there for them that love them enough to not care if they get mad?
My God.
And my son knows, and so does my daughter. I don't care if they get mad. The Bible says the fathers to their children, not just their sons. My children don't, they know I love them enough to not care if you're mad at me. And guess what they know? They know that I'm going to love them anyway. No matter how mad they get at me, they know my daddy still loves me.
They do. That's true.
No matter what they say or do, they know if the rubber hits the road, their daddy got their back. They can storm out the door, say, I ain't never coming back. You jerk, I hate you. I hate that daddy. Daddy's a jerk. I hate him. I hate him. Oh, I'm out of gas. Daddy, can you come and give me some gas? And they know that daddy will show up. I'm going to show up and I'm going to talk bad about him and say, look, you shouldn't have left this house. This is why I'm giving you gas, because you know better than that. And here's some money to take care of yourself. Don't you dare be out here this late again. Find your way, get home.
That's the truth anyhow.
It's my daughter. It's imitating my daughter. She'll do that. I dang on my last nerve. He gave me gas, but he's a jerk. I can't stand my daddy. He's on my nerve. I'm locked out of the house. I can't get in. Daddy, can you come and help me get in the house? And there's no question in her mind that daddy will show up. How many men are raised, how many children are raised with that level of confidence? It's just not happening anymore. Society has changed to such a degree that no longer do we have children or men that are actually honestly leaving legacy to their children, because they do not have legacy in themselves. They're not passing down the wealth that has been placed in them. Not enough men are creating Richie Riches. We're creating just who you are. There you go. Then just whatever. One day you'll be something, blah, blah, blah. I like to show the house of cards, but there's one guy in there that the little boy says, one day I'm going to be president. And the man looks over at him and says, you're never going to be president, boy. You better get that out of your head. The white man ain't never going to let you be president. You better stop thinking that. They'll let you get so far, but they're not going to let you get. He poured that into that boy's spirit.
Yeah.
And then he said, do you understand me, boy? And the boy said, yeah, I understand. He squashed ambition out of the future in him.
Yeah.
He destroyed that because that's what was poured into him. You can't pour strength out of a vessel that's not filled with strength. You can't pour power out of a vessel that is not filled with power.
Jesus.
You cannot pour courage out of a vessel that doesn't have any courage.
Yeah.
The first thing that men have to do is recognize they need help. The next thing men have to do is be willing to accept help that they need. I say this about young people all the time. Young people don't like it all the time when I say it, but I say it, and I'm going to say it about the men too. They have to recognize that they don't know as much as they think they know. A lot of men don't know anything about being a man. They know how to be a male, but they don't know how to be a man.
Amen.
You got to be willing to look up stuff. You got to be willing to do some research. You got to be willing to grow. You got to be willing to I'm going to say this because the next point here is you got to be willing to seek advice from successful men. Find people who are doing that you want to do better than you're doing it. Don't seek advice from somebody that's available. Seek advice from somebody that's doing better. You will never become better if the only advice you get are from people that are on your level.
Say so.
Or beneath you. I say this to married couples all the time. Your marriage is failing because all your friends have failing marriages. And your men are weak because the only friends
say that. Jesus.
You want to be a man? Men, find successful men. Commit yourself to constant and steady pursuit of growth. Make up your mind that you're going to grow, to be intellectual and smart. Men, I'm saying this to men. I'll say it to ladies, but I'm saying it to men specifically because God wants me to, even though there are not a lot of men here today. I just don't need the drama from the Almighty. Men, read books. Read, read, read. If you're not growing intellectually, you are growing stupider by the moment. Ladies, I say this to you as well. Turn your lives and your homes into libraries. Read constantly. Read books. Read other books. Not enough men read. Not enough pastors read. Not enough people read. There's a lot of people that say they read, but they don't read. They read excerpts. They skim. They don't read. Read. Read to grow. If you are not growing, you are dying. If your mind is not improving, your mind is atrophy. I want everyone to understand that I read constantly. My house, my book, I have books in here. I got books in my basement. I got books. Listen to this. And this is not a point that I wrote down, but I kind of do believe this. If you're not willing to invest in your own education, why do you think anybody else will? Now I'm going to say this because I'm a pastor where I teach a lot. I teach Bible studies, ministers training, homeless shelter Bible studies. I teach a lot. I offer opportunities for people to grow around me because I happen to have a lot of stuff in my head. I love teaching. You can come, anything you ask me to teach, I'll teach it on Wednesday night, Thursdays, anything you want. You say, Pastor, will you teach this? I'll say, yes, I love it because I love teaching. But hear this. Does anybody think I get books for free? Do you think I get a discount on the books I have? Go in my office. I got books layered into books. And those are books, not even talking about the books at my home or the books in my basement or the books in my garage or the books I've thrown away. Do you think those books are free? No, I spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on books. I spend books on my tablet. I've got at least 30 books on my tablet. If you're not willing to invest in your own brain, then why do you think you're going to grow? People spend more money on fast food than a book. If somebody says, I want to go to McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken, I'll spend $7. If you go with your wife, you might spend $15, $20 at McDonald's. I'm not even making this up. McDonald's. If two people go, am I wrong? You go to McDonald's with two people, you may spend like $15, $20 at McDonald's. I've gone to Sheetz, which is a gas station that serves food, or Wawa's, which is a gas station that serves food, and spent $25 on food. But get frustrated if I have to spend $5.99 on a book. Man, read, grow. Let your sons and your daughters see you read.
Amen.
If your daughter or your son came and said, Daddy, what's a good book to read? Do you have a suggestion based upon your reading it? Put that out there. It's not on the list, but read. Ignorance has a price too. You might not realize it, but not reading has a price too. In fact, not reading has a greater price than reading. Me and my wife is studying, taking a class right now, and she's studying globalization, and it's really interesting. It's interesting to me. But I believe the society is collapsing, and a lot of people are unemployed not because they're lazy, but because they're stupid. They're uneducated. Do you realize that within the next generation, by the time Omari is an adult, there's a fair chance that there will be no fast food jobs. There definitely won't be garbage men. There may not even be taxi drivers because we've moved to the time to where we have cars that can drive themselves. Technology is now, I watch where there's a machine that one person drives, chops down a tree, picks it up, lays it on its side, slices it up, and puts it in a pile. Lumberjacks used to make great money. There goes a job. If you're not willing to commit yourself to reading, and improving your mind, then you have committed yourself to being unemployed and broken.
That's right.
Society is moving to a place where we're going to be like George Jetson or Star Trek, where all people do is read and learn stuff. I was watching House of Cards, and the fascinating thing about the president is he mostly sits there and reads stuff. Yet, most of our men never read anything. Most of our women never read anything. Accept your weaknesses. Recognize you have to grow. Don't dwell on your weaknesses. Let it go. Let it go. Men, everybody got weaknesses. I say it all the time. Ladies, let it go. Everybody has weaknesses. Magnify your strengths.
Amen.
I like superheroes. I like comic book characters because, just so you know, just how I roll, they sort of remind me of me. I like Batman because me and Batman got that in common. That we are hardcore and we ain't playing around. We will kick down doors and we have a utility belt full of gadgets, and if I need to, I can figure out a way to beat that villain no matter how big and bad he is. Much like Superman, I have X-ray vision to see right through your drama. Don't play with me. Like the Flash, I'm faster than you think I am. Like the Hulk, don't make me angry. You won't like me when I get angry. I like these comic book characters because they remind me of me. They remind me of what I am. I'm Superman, not Clark Kent. I'm Batman, not Bruce Wayne. I'm the Hulk and not Bruce Banner. Too often we spend our whole lives being the alter ego and not the superhero. Too often we make up our mind to be less. Write this scripture down, and I'm going to close on this point because Lord knows I got this. I haven't even got to legacy yet. 1 Kings chapter 2, I'm going to read verse 1. I'm going to read starting at verse 1. Now the days of David drew near that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son. Get this, I want you to understand that his father is about to die. He's about to lay down his life. He's about to be done. He says, I go the way of all the earth. I'm about to die. And he said to his son, be strong therefore, and prove yourself a man. Be a man. Be a man. I'm about to die, but be a man. I mean, who's had a father to say that to them? Be a man. Who's had a father that knew that meant? My mother used to say it to me all the time, but, you know, it sounded like a dig to me when she would say it. How many's had fathers that said to you, look at you, be a man. I'm about to die, you be a man. Then he goes on to what that means. Be strong, therefore, and prove yourself a man. And keep the charge of the Lord your God. Being a man involves keeping his charge. And walk his ways and keep his statutes. Being a man involves living right. Because no man wants his son to grow up and be a criminal.
Amen.
But it's sure hard to demand when you kind of won yourself. Keep his statutes, his commandments, his judgment, his tenets, as it is written in the laws of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do.
Jesus.
And wherever you turn. This is the important part. And this is going to be the beginning of next week's lesson. And the Lord may fulfill his word, which he spoken concerning me, saying, if your sons take heed to your ways, to their ways, to walk before me in truth and in all their heart and with all their soul, he says, you shall not lack a man in the throne of Israel. He said this, if you do all this stuff, then what God promised me, you get. If you live right, what God promised me comes down to you. If they do what they're supposed to do, what I promised you, your legacy, David,
Yes.
will transfer
Jesus.
to your sons.
Thank
In
you,
fact,
Father.
there'll
Thank
never not be a man on the throne in Israel.
you. Yes.
In my home, I'm leaving a legacy to my kids.
That's right.
That if they do what God commanded them to do, then they will have all the promises that were promised to me, not to them. Let that sink in, because it's deeper than you realize. I I'm telling my children that they get to have my promises.
Yes. Lord have mercy. Thank you, Lord.
They get to have my blessings. I'm building an empire, baby, that they may live in.
Jesus.
And all my spiritual children. For all of you who have sons, and I'm saying this to everybody, women, men, keep this in mind. They are going to one day have your legacy.
Jesus.
They're going to have what was promised to you.
Yes, God.
Whether it's you're going to be distant and unloving, whether they're going to grow up without family around them, with nobody to care for them if time of trouble, whether they won't know their parentage or their family. How many of us can honestly say, I don't know my cousins, my grandfathers. They know I'm not really that connected to my auntie, my uncle. I'm not that close to my family. What do you believe your children will have?
Jesus. God, Jesus.
There'll always be a man on the throne. When the fathers start off the sentence with, buck up, be a man. I'm going to close on this. Women, don't you dare choose a man that has no legacy to share. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. And for all you men in this room, if you were raised without a legacy, then start one.
Come on now.
Make up your mind that you will be the first in generations to come.
Yes.
Where strength and power flow. You will be the first in your family where God rules
Yes.
and reigns.
That's right now.
You'll be the first in your home with a degree. You'll be the first
Yes.
to have your kids will have what you never had.
Yes.
You make up your mind. And for the women, you demand it the same way.
Yes.
God didn't call women to be men. Why do they have to be? Because the men don't know how to be men. It's time to focus on that legacy.
Yes.
It's time to figure out what we're supposed to bring.